Good afternoon. My name is David Barclay, and I am the Faith in Public Life Officer at the Contextual Theology Centre. And the Contextual Theology Centre is a charity. We're based in East London, and we exist to help churches to engage with their community. And my job focuses primarily on issues around economic justice. And that's how I got involved in this work, in the work of trying to promote responsible credit and savings, and that's where the idea of the Church Credit Champions Network came from. And so today I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction about what the network is, what we're trying to do, where it's come from, and then, as Sir Hector said, take questions. So I'll try to be quite brief in this introduction and then give plenty of space for questions and discussion. So a quick bit of background as to where this has all come from. We, as an organisation, CTC, have been helping churches to engage on issues around money and finance really ever since the financial crisis, 2007-2008. And if you're interested in the kind of story of that, we've got a publication on our website called God and the Moneylenders, which gives a bit of the story of what we've been doing and also has a really interesting section in terms of theological reflection on these issues, which really goes into some of those questions. But also, it talks a bit about some of the action that churches that we've been working with have taken. And initially, that action focused largely on trying to stop some of the bad practices of payday lending. We heard lots of stories about the impact of payday lending, and there's a lot of energy to try and stop some of the more obvious abuses. And so there's a campaign, there continues to be a campaign called Just Money, which we run with an organisation called Citizens UK. But alongside that work, and that work has been really quite successful, and we've seen the government and the new regulator really taking some quite big steps forward on that issue of stopping some of the malpractice. But there was also this question of, what do we do on the kind of positive side? Yes, we want to try and stop some of the negative things that we can see in our communities. But what do we do when people come to us and say, I need credit, my bank won't give it to me, it's an emergency? You know, where are we passing people on to? Apart from just saying, don't go to Wonga, what do we have to say to people? And obviously then the Archbishop's comments last summer created a huge wave of interest in that question, and particularly in the question of how might we work together as local churches with credit unions to start to have a kind of systemic impact on access to responsible credit and savings. But what was happening, we identified quite quickly, could perhaps be described in true Church of England fashion as productive chaos. There was lots of pockets of energy in different places and lots of different kinds of initiatives all happening at once. And many of them were absolutely fantastic, but some of them were running into some problems. We had credit unions who were saying, we can't cope with all of these individual churches all coming to us from different directions, all wanting to find out who we are and what we do. We just don't have the resources to deal with that. And we had churches saying, we find it quite difficult to engage with our credit union. They don't seem to have a very clear ask for what we can do to help. We want to come and give our savings. They're telling us they don't want that. And then the conversation is broken down. So what we recognized was there's a kind of communication and coordination issue here that is inherent in the nature of both local churches and community finance providers. By definition, they are local. They are trying to be ethical, they're trying to respond to their individual context, and therefore bringing them together constructively is quite a challenge. And so that's where this idea of trying to create a network came from. Sorry, we've lost, can we go back a slide? Thank you. And so we started developing this idea in the autumn, and particularly in partnership with the Church Urban Fund, who many of you will know, an anti-poverty charity very closely connected with the Church of England, and also particularly with the Bishop of Stepney, who's the Bishop for our area, Bishop Adrian Newman, and who has been a great champion of credit unions and on this topic for many years. And of course, as we just heard, the network then was formally launched just last week, and we're very grateful to Sir Hector and to the task group for their support in getting us to this stage. So I've described a bit about the background, but I think something happened to me quite recently that really exemplified very clearly why I think we need a project like this. And it was that a friend of mine in Wood Green in London, who had this envelope put through his door. And when he opened the envelope, it doesn't say anything on the envelope apart from the small words "speedy cash." But when he opened the envelope, what he found was, first of all, several flyers for the many different ways that you can borrow money from Speedy Cash, the payday lender, at, I think it is 2,000, just over 2,000% APR. Yeah, 2,115% APR. But then that's nothing new, right? That kind of advertising. But what he then found, which was a bit different and a bit interesting, was this. I don't know if you can see that. This is a children's colouring picture of the Speedy Cash mascot, Speedy-Roo. So it's a little kangaroo there. He's got Speedy Cash on his top, and he's got wads of £20 notes. And the thinking is obviously that if the children are busy colouring in the pictures of Speedy Cash, Speedy-Roo, when the parents then say, well, we don't have money to go on that holiday, or we can't afford that present for Christmas, the children have the easy response that, oh, Speedy-Roo can help us out. And actually, if you go to a Speedy Cash shop, you're likely to find someone dressed up as Speedy-Roo who will be handing out balloons, posing for photographs, everything that you might expect from that kind of advertising. And I think what this kind of really grim advertising from payday lenders shows us is why we need a church credit champions network. Because we all have to borrow and save at different points in our life, but the economic situation in the UK at the moment means that more and more people are having to borrow for those small emergencies. Something breaks, the washing machine, the car, maybe they need to take an emergency trip, and they need to go for credit. And mainstream credit providers are shrinking their offer and shrinking the people that they will work with. And so what we've seen is, as the payday lending industry has gone from being £300 million business in 2006 to now a £3.7 billion industry today, you can see there are huge profits to be made from exploiting people in these circumstances and encouraging irresponsible lending at the same time. People often, as you'll know, end up in places like Speedy Cash because they think they don't have any other choice. But actually, the reality is that's increasingly not quite the whole picture. In most places in the UK now, people have access to credit unions, local mutual businesses that encourage savings and offer affordable loans. And in some places, there are growing social enterprises that are seeking to meet people's credit needs in different ways, but always with that theme of wanting to be more responsible and more ethical than the payday lenders. The problem is that these organizations don't have the budgets because they're not profit maximizing, and they don't have the will to compete in quite the same way with these guys. So this is where the local church comes in, because actually we believe that if you look at the resources of local churches, you've got everything there that you might need to develop the capacity and the presence of responsible lenders like credit unions. You've got people that want to save money ethically. You've got people that need to borrow money and will pay it back. You've got people with skills and time to volunteer. You've got buildings in the heart of local communities, networks of relationships to local employers, and perhaps most importantly, a long-term commitment to the common good of the community. And so the purpose of the Church Credit Champions Network is to be a bridge between these many resources and between these many resources and the community finance sector. What we're going to do is build relationships with credit unions and local social enterprises in order to understand their current capacity, understand their business, understand their needs, understand their plans for the future. And then alongside that, we will work with local churches to identify and train credit champions to take positive action. Everything from telling their friends about the credit union all the way through to starting up a community bank in their church building. So we're going to start that process in London, in 2 dioceses, in Southwark and in London, and then next year we'll start in Liverpool as well. And I'll talk a bit about plans for the future at the end. Our aims are threefold. Firstly, we're trying to increase the number of churches that are engaged on these issues of money and credit in their community. Why are we doing that? Why is that one of our aims? Well, because we believe that actually effective action has to always start with listening. And so we won't be going into any church and telling them exactly what the problem is in their community and exactly what they need to do about it to solve it. Instead, we'll help them to listen to the experiences of their members and their neighbours in terms of money, and particularly in terms of the institutions through which they borrow and save. From this process, we'll then identify clergy and lay leaders to train as credit champions, and that's the second one of our aims. And what does that training mean? Well, we'll be helping them to understand what are the options out there for people in their area, and how could their church be involved in promoting them. And then finally, we'll give them the support that they need to see through those plans and to share lessons about what's happening across their network. And you can see what we're planning in terms of expected outcomes in each area across roughly a 2-year period. We think those outcomes are fairly modest, you might think, but also realistic, achievable, and flexible enough to allow a diverse response from different kinds of churches and different kinds of credit providers. So here's what the process will look like for churches wanting to engage in the network. The first step is to connect, and that means to get in touch with one of the network staff, ideally me. So that could be as simple as just sending me an email, if you're a church or credit union, for example, that wants to be involved, introducing yourself, or giving me a phone call, or we'll be running briefing sessions in the areas that we're working in for people to come along to and find out about the network. And at that stage, we'll be telling people what we're up to, telling them about the network, giving them the information they need to make a decision about whether they want to get involved. The second step, as I said, is listening. And I'll talk a little bit about what that entails in just a minute. But as I said before, this is about listening to people's real experiences and also listening to Scripture, listening to God before taking action. Then the third step is learn. That's where we'll be doing the Credit Champions training, so people can learn both more about the local credit union or social enterprise, but also learn some of the skills that you might need in order to develop successful projects. And I'm interested to try and pick up from you, from the people that are involved in some of these different kinds of activities. What are the core skills that people need to make this effective, to make these kind of projects sustainable? And then finally, act. We want people to get out there and be doing something, and then we'll be supporting and encouraging them and sharing the lessons. So what are the kind of resources to help people to do that? Well, first of all, what we've produced is something called the Seeing Change course. And that is a 3-week Bible study course on the story of Nehemiah and community engagement. Because actually, I think there's a really important job here to do in terms of teaching and learning and studying about why this is core business for a church. At CTC, when we talk about what is our mission, what we're trying to do, part of that is we're trying to help churches to see community engagement as home affairs and not foreign affairs. It's not a kind of added extra that some people might be particularly blessed and gifted for, and everybody else can kind of just let them get on with it. It's something for everyone to engage in. It's something for the whole life of the church, and it's something that's right at the heart of what it is to be a church. And we found the story of Nehemiah to be a really useful and often overlooked example with a huge richness of lessons for how to do that well, how to do that effectively, and how to do that faithfully. So that's a resource. We've been making some videos. We've got the promo video for that course is up on our website now, and the full course will be available very shortly. And that course leads on to doing something called a money talk. And this is really the heart of the listen stage that I was talking about, is running an event called a money talk. A money talk is a facilitated conversation. It's very simple. It lasts about half an hour usually, and you could do it in a church service during a sermon slot. You could do it after a church service. You could do it in a small group. It's very flexible. Basically what it is it's a way for people to start to engage with the story of Nehemiah, but also then to ask some questions and to get discussing about people's experiences of borrowing and saving in their community, and what are the problems that people face, what are the kind of practical changes that might make a positive difference to that. And then where the rubber really hits the road is the question, well, what's the role of your local church in this? And it's designed to take people on a bit of a journey from thinking about what are the problems through to thinking about how what positive change might look like, through to then, okay, well, what can we do? What can we really do about this? So we've been running them in all different kinds of churches, different kinds of traditions, different kinds of contexts, and we've found them to be hugely important for catalyzing the future work that's happened in those churches. Then the next stage might be signposting. And what I mean by that is, as I said before, we're not there to tell people what the problem is. So if people's energy is really for offering financial advice, debt advice, well, at that stage, we have to say, that's not our core expertise, but we know some people for whom it is. So go and talk to Christians Against Poverty, go and talk to Community Money Advice, and then let us know how that goes, and we'll be there supporting you and encouraging you to do that. Or it could be about money management courses, if that's the issue that comes out in the Money Talk really strongly. Again, we know some great money management courses that are out there that people can get hold of and run in their church. But for those people that I think are very much out there in local churches who say, actually, we want to be involved in promoting access to responsible credit in our community, that's where we say, okay, come along and get some training. Come to the Credit Champions training, which we'll be delivering in partnership with credit unions, social enterprises, and I've talked a bit about that. And then finally, as I said, we'll be supporting them and encouraging them to share best practice. So the last thing to say is that this network is very much a pilot. And the reason is, as I hope you've gathered from this presentation, this isn't your usual top-down, targets-driven approach to solving a problem. Because we believe that actually the best way to harness the energy and the passion of local churches is to work from the bottom up and to add the skills, the information, the connections that can help people to turn their local passions into maximum tangible impact. But that means we need to test things out and see what works, what doesn't work, and what are the lessons that we can learn. And then we hope to roll this out much more widely, as Sir Hector has said, in partnership with the Archbishop's Task Group and also with the Church Urban Fund's Together network, which provides a kind of structure to be able to do things in lots of different dioceses relatively quickly. But having said that, the resources are available either already. I've got some with me, some guides to holding a money talk, if you think, actually, I could go back and do one of those pretty much straight away. As I said, the See and Change course will be on our website very soon. And of course, we're always interested to learn and to find out what's happening elsewhere, so that the people in our areas where we're working already can learn from those examples of best practice. And also so we can get a sense of, as we scale this up, what might it look like in different areas? What are the challenges we need to be aware of? So I hope that gives you a good feel for what we're up to and why. And I'm really interested to hear your thoughts, reflections, questions. So thank you.